Climbing back upon Mount Soapbox for another rant. And we're going to go kind of old school today because I've been playing video games most of my life. And one of the consoles that I first started playing on back in the day was the original Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES. And a lot of classic games that I love from that. Super Mario Brothers, Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, The Legend of Zelda. Speaking of Legend of Zelda, it's now available over on the Nintendo's Switch Online. And if you want that and you got Nintendo Switch, we're not ranting about Nintendo Switch, by the way. But in case you're wondering, it's, $20 for 12 months, or the family plan's $35. Doesn't really matter. The point is, recently they added a twist on an old classic, Legend of Zelda SP. Now, what is Legend of Zelda SP? Well, I'm glad you asked. I happened to find an article from Game Crate that we're going to read over. By the way, it's listed in the description section. Nintendo recently released something very strange on their online NES service, dubbed NES Flicks by some fans. The Legend of Zelda SP, or The Legend of Zelda Living the Life of Luxury in some regions, is a modified, super easy version of the original game. Instead of starting with no items and being asked to wander the world looking for pieces of the Triforce, SP starts you with all the equipment, items, and 255 rupees. And this is basically what it says. In this souped-up version of The Legend of Zelda, you'll start with a ton of rupees and items. You'll begin with all equipment, including the white sword, magical shield, blue ring, and even the power bracelet. But if Ganon's still giving you a hard time, the power of money, 255 rupees worth of money, will overcome. Just buy yourself some more items, give it another shot, and being the game once grants you the access to a more difficult version of the game called Second Quest. Continuing, this got a lot of fans excited. The release itself has limited appeal. It's meant to turn the original Legend of Zelda into something closer to a Breath of the Wild experience, but it's really just the equivalent of entering a couple of genie codes. However, that's exactly why fans were excited. Nintendo, for the first time, released an in-house ROM hack. This opens up so many things. It means that Nintendo could retranslate and rehack Mother 3 in order to finally give it a Western release. It means that ROM hacks like Casio Mario or something familiar might finally see an official Nintendo release and be playable or on an official Nintendo console. It means that the wide world of homebrewers might finally be able to work with Nintendo, since they finally seem to have the technology to edit their own older games. At least that's what we originally thought. Turns out the actual answer might be more disappointing than we all assumed. Twitter user and game developer Chameleon pointed out that the game isn't a ROM hack at all. Rather, it's a save state. The Legend of Zelda Living the Life of Luxury is probably one of the strangest releases Nintendo's ever done. It's not even a ROM hack. It's an official release of a save state that acquired these starting items through in-game means. I kid you not, this is just so freaking hilarious, it's sad. For those of you who aren't part of the emulation community, as a save state is a way to save your game on an emulator by recording the literal state of a game's memory. Essentially, a snapshot of the game is taken, freezing every variable in place at that exact time. The game can be then reverted to the same state at any time simply by manually setting every byte to recreate the snapshot. Common notes that you can see open caves and burned out bushes in The Legend of Zelda SP, which means it's likely that someone actually played through the game, collected all these items and rupees, and then walked back to the start of the game in order to create the save state. He further claims that you can die, hit save, and go back to the title screen to start a new game, and you won't actually retain these bonuses, meaning that the original ROM is actually unaltered. You can even tell that it's a save state because it doesn't start you at the title screen. It just drops you right into the game. Really, Nintendo? Are you kidding me, Nintendo? Wow. This is so freaking pathetic. This leads us to the big question. Why? I'm no hacking genius, well, neither am I. But the schlub like me can open up a hex editor and do a quick Google search and create a ROM hack that mimics what Legend of Zelda SP is doing without this weird save data kludge. In fact, there are a ton of freeware ROM editors that will let you do this without any knowledge of hex editing. Perhaps Nintendo decided to do this and make a stand against emulation. They're notoriously against any form of emulation, even legal forms, saying that any emulation is tantamount to piracy and any altercation of game code is strictly illegal. This will allow them to repackage a newer version of The Legend of Zelda without actually altering any of the game's code, but then again, their whole NES Flix service is essentially an emulator itself. In fact, the Wii and Wii U virtual consoles were proven to be nothing more than emulators. In fact, the virtual console games were proven to be nothing more than ROMs that you can download on the very sites that Nintendo is trying to close down. They see they've written about how you can find NES headers and virtual console files in the past, and it's already been proven that NES Online is just running the same emulator for its NES Classic Edition users. Users can upload their own ROMs and ROM hacks with very little effort. Let's see, Kapu But Spooky said this on Twitter. Good lord, hashtag Nintendo Switch Online's NES games are plain .NES files. The GUI appears to be entirely LUA, much like the NES and Super Nintendo Classics, so people are going to be able to go to town on this. The database files contains a list of valid games in plain text. Oh, that's hilarious. Of course, we already knew that about the classics, didn't we? So Nintendo understands emulators and using emulator technology, but for some reason release save states as a new game when you could easily do it better by entering a few Game Genie codes. Man, I miss the Game Genie. Man, that takes me back. Thus, we are still left asking why. Why on earth would Nintendo go through such a roundabout process to repackage The Legend of Zelda? Why are they so averse to hacking their own games? What sort of weird, infernal, bureaucratic processes are keeping Nintendo from creating such a simple ROM hack? Finally, is it right for Nintendo to be marketing a save state as an actual game? Once again, the article linked below in the description section. Props to Angelo, the writer of the article. He made some very valid points about this. So yes, instead of just basically releasing The Legend of Zelda as part of the NES Online for Nintendo Switch Online, one of the games they're going to continue to roll out as, I guess, incentive for people on the Switch to get Switch Online, even though I hear it kind of sort of sucks. They had somebody at Nintendo basically go through the game and collect all the stuff, get 255 rupees, the white sword, the shield, all this stuff, and then go back to the start of the game and save the game. And they're billing this as The Legend of Zelda SP. You really can't make this shit up. I just don't understand. Would it have been too difficult for you, Nintendo, to, I don't know, why didn't you just simply just release The Legend of Zelda as is without being special or SP or whatever? Because most Legend of Zelda fans don't have a problem with, playing the game from start to finish. I like the idea of codes and cheats and the Game Genie, but at the same time, I think the majority of Legend of Zelda fans out there that have been wanting to play the OG Legend of Zelda that either A, never got around to purchasing the NES Classic for $60 US, or simply don't want to. As mentioned in the Game Crate article, it's basically just an emulator. The same thing as the Super Nintendo Classic. But unfortunately, there's plenty of us Nintendo fanboys and fangirls out there, working the member berries, getting us to purchase those consoles. Guilty as charged, unfortunately. But at the same time, Nintendo, like this guy that wrote the article, Angelo, I'm no freaking hexing expert either, but sooner or later, people were going to catch on to this little charade on the NES Online for Switch Online titled The Legend of Zelda SP. People were going to see through the deception and realize exactly how you guys did this. It made it to where you start the game, allegedly, able to get the white sword and the top-notch shield and the bracelet and a blue ring and 255 rupees and on the keys, the bombs. You weren't fooling the gaming community at all with this version of The Legend of Zelda, and you would have been better off just releasing it on NES Online as is. But despite the fact most of us love Nintendo and Nintendo games and consoles, for whatever rhyme or reason, those that work at and run Nintendo, they live in a completely different world than us. One where they're taking their sweet time to release the NES catalog for Switch Online instead of having it there from day one, because that's what a lot of the community would love to have, the ability to purchase these old games from the NES and Super Nintendo, maybe even the N64 or the GameCube. But why do that when they can sell emulators like the NES Classic, Super Nintendo Classic, and probably coming this fall or next year, the N64 Classic? Yeah, I'll probably end up purchasing that as well. And for the record, I love the newest Zelda game, Breath of the Wild. I consider it up there along with The Legend of Zelda and Ocarina of Time. It's just unfortunate I'm not one of the blessed content creators and streamers that can play their games, which is why I'm cosplaying as Link in Grand Theft Auto Online in the B-roll. In conclusion, going back to that question that the writer for the Game Crate article, once again linked below in the description section, was asking, why, when it comes to Nintendo, who the hell knows?